Hello, can you see the white screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. So, what we'll be doing actually today we have to primarily talk about the fundamentals of welding or in general joining. So, this can be used for joining of the metals or non-metals as well, like the plastics or plastic-based composites. And the more interesting or more common problems which are encountered in like joining of the metals with the non-metals. But very frequently it is required to use both metals and non-metals, and whenever we have to use or make any component which is usable, certainly we'll not be relying only on the one type of the metal, but it will be combination of the metal and non-metals. Due to the compatibility issues between the metals and non-metals, really fusion joining is difficult. That's why the other options of the joining are explored. So primarily, say if we talk of the joining of the metal to metal, what happens? Like say in most conventional cases, if we take the two parts, like both are made of the same metal A. So these can be joined. Like say for the joining, what is the best thing or best scenario is like the two gets joined automatically without doing anything. But this is certainly not workable. Like to get joined very easily without doing anything. But this is not possible because things do not happen automatically. You have to do something. So what we can do is the next feasible option is let's put some kind of the adhesive between the two. In this case, the parent metals A and B are not affected at all and the joint is developed, though the joint is weak. So it may serve some of the purposes, like just for positioning purpose where no major force is acting. There is a third better. So this the first best is this, but this is not workable. This is certainly workable, but we get the low strength. Third better option is where between the between the two components made of A metal only, let's put the molten metal of the low strength, like say the soldering iron you must have heard, or the brazing alloy. They have the lower melting point than the parent metal. So that is placed between the components to be joined. So in this process, we get some better strength as compared to the adhesives, as well as we get also better thermal stability so that joint can be used not just at say 50 degree, because above 50 degree these do not really serve. They perform, adhesive joints do not perform, they really decompose and they fail like anything. So the soldering and brazing is the third better option. Okay, but in this case we have to supply heat for melting purpose. The fourth better option is where like let's deform the two components plastically, so they intermingling or mixing between the two takes place in the solid state itself. No use of heat, primarily use of force for plastic deformation. So in this approach, primarily the mechanical deformation takes place in the solid state itself, and this is good because the base metals will not be affected in the all these processes whatever we have talked so far. In this case we did nothing. In the second case, in adhesive joining, we just put the adhesive, the base metals were remain unaffected. And in third case we put the molten metal, although little heat was supplied to the base metal due to the thermal conductivity, but that is not much to adversely affect the base materials. Okay, the fourth option is where some kind of deformation is realized here to get the joint. So this is the fourth better option. Okay, still whenever the deformation or force is applied or deformation is realized, some heat is generated, and of course that will be dissipated to the underlying base metal. Why I'm talking of? Because this heat and the force both are really not desirable to a great extent, and why it is so I will talk at length. And the fifth, and you can say the most commonly used option is this, where the two components A and B need to be joined. They, with the application of the external heat, they are fused to the edges are fused and then they are brought to the molten state, and after the solidification you get the joint. So in this process, you supply lot of heat to the underlying thermal conducting base metal. So what is happening here? Whenever you supply any heat like this, say this joint has been developed, right? So lot of heat has been dissipated to the underlying base metal, changing the properties of the material which has been heated. So here the zone which has been really heated to the high temperature, say above 300 to 400 degrees centigrade for say aluminum alloys. For steel, say if it is getting heated above 600 to 700 degrees centigrade, then the properties of the steels will be getting modified. So basically you are trying to develop the joint through the fusion. So this joint is this is the weld, but next to that also the material properties gets modified, and it forms some kind of zone which will have the properties different from the parent material. Parent material itself. Parent material is this here A and B. I'll give example. Say A had a yield strength or strength of the base metal of 400 MPa megapascals. Okay, 400 megapascals. You may find a situation where the heat affected zone has lost its properties. It has become of 300 MPa both the sides. So it will form a weak zone. Similarly, it may become of 500 MPa also. So there are both the scenarios, both the possibilities where you will see that there is a change in properties, and that change, you see, that change may not at all be acceptable. Okay, so if that is happening, then what you will do? Need to pause. So okay, so if that is not happening, if the change in base metal properties is taking place, that is by and large unacceptable in case of the welding. And if that is the case, then we must do something. Okay, so let's take, okay, the base metal. This is the weld joint which has been developed. Okay, and this is the zone which has been affected by the heat. So we call it heat affected zone, HAZ. Both are called heat affected zone. So this is the weld zone, and next to that we have heat affected zone where the properties, okay, the properties have been modified. These can be modified in very undesirable manners. This can be very strong, this can be very weak. So properties are getting modified, and most of the time this modification is undesirable. So the scenario, you see, the two components to be joined. Okay, so here you can use filler of your choice. Base metal had a strength of 400 MPa. You can use the base metal of 300 MPa. You can use the base metal of 500 MPa. So there is a choice of using suitable electrode. So you get the weld metal of your choice in terms of a strength, in terms of corrosion resistance, in terms of the toughness, or whatever properties are needed. But when you use the fusion welding, there is no way to get rid of or to avoid this heat affected zone, and which is experiencing the change in properties that are not desirable. So you have a good control over the weld, but you don't have any control over the HAZ. Why? Because you have already supplied lot of heat, and because of thermal conductivity, the metal properties, base metal properties have got modified, and this modification is most of the time is undesirable. So what we can do? We don't have anything in our hand. You see, if you supply less heat, then probably this width of the undesirable zone will get reduced. If you supply very less heat, very small heat affected zone will be formed like both the sides. But this zone will be formed in any case. So say for using, so when you supply more heat, there are more problems to the heat affected zone and base metal properties. And when you supply less heat, the problem is less. So when we have supplied minimum heat, when we did nothing, the first case, just bring the two components together. Second case also, there is no application of the heat, where we supply just adhesive, we applied just adhesive. In third case, we supplied little heat in form of brazing and soldering, where low melting point material was applied. In fourth case, we applied force for facilitating the deformation. This is certainly better situation as compared to the fusion welding, where we are supplying lot of heat just to make sure that the edges are brought to the molten state, and thereafter through solidification we are getting the weld joint. So here, you know, that more the heat supplied, more the problems because of change in properties of the heat affected zone. And in fusion welding, nobody can eliminate the heat affected zone. It can be minimized through the control of the heat input. Okay, so and you know, more than 90% of the welding or joining is performed through this fusion welding only. More than 90% of the welding is performed through this fusion welding only. Rest of the joining is really not for non-structural applications. Okay, so let me close this. So this is that diagram. We get this modified zone, both the sides. Okay. Okay, so we get this modified zone, both the sides, in form of the heat affected zone. Weld is of our choice. This we can do as per our convenience. And this is the unaffected zone base metal. So the width of this yellow zone can be very wide or it can be very narrow. So what are the things that will be governing to the width of this? The width of the I need to just take exit. Okay, so let me use some white sheet if possible. Okay, so so what we can do to control this width of the heat affected zone. Okay, let's see. There are different welding processes, starting with the gas welding. Okay, then very commonly used roadside welding that you see is the shielded metal arc welding. Okay, the very commonly used for high quality welding is the gas tungsten arc welding. Then for industrial applications for high quality weld, the gas metal arc welding. Then for very high quality thin sheets where very fast and thick sheets are to be welded, there are other processes also, like the plasma arc, then laser beam welding, and then the electron beam welding. Okay, so if you see the kind of the power density that they are able to apply here, it is 10 to the power 8 watt per mm square, and on the other hand gas welding is just 10 to the power 2, that is 100 watt per mm square. So it's like per second. This is the kind of the heat it is able to deliver, and the laser beam is able to deliver 10 to the power 8. So means these are in increasing order of the power density that they can deliver. So the higher the power density related to the particular fusion welding process, lesser the heat you need to supply, because it takes very less time to supply the required amount of heat. So say metal A will require a typical 2 joule per mm cube of the heat. Say this is the heat required for bringing the things to the molten state, which includes both latent and the sensible heat. So say this is the kind of the heat that is needed to bring the things. But when you are supplying the heat at this rate, it takes long time to reach this stage. But when we are using this process where the rate of heat delivery, rate of the power density associated with the process is very high, in that case, in very less time, very less time it takes to supply the required heat, and here it takes very long time. And say this is the kind of the metal system which is being welded. So when we use gas welding, it covers lot of area of the gas flame, then it delivers the heat at a very low rate. So you continue to supply the heat for 1 minute, 2 minutes just to get the things in molten state. Since the metal is in thermal conducting in behavior, so it will be dissipating lot of heat to the underlying base metal, forming very wide heat affected zone. Okay, very wide heat affected zone both the sides. So means with the greater there is great compromise with the properties. On the other hand, when we use the laser one, in a very short time you are able to deliver a lot of heat, so it comes to the molten state immediately. Okay, and so heat you need to supply to bring the things to the molten state is very less. Heat dissipated to the base metal is also very less. Okay, and that's why HZ is very narrow. Very narrow HZ, or very you can say very negligible HZ is formed. So the compromise with the properties of the base metal is negligible. That is why the laser welding or electron beam welding offers a good quality weld as compared to that of the normally or the gas welding or shielded metal arc welding or other processes. Okay, so okay, so this is what I was saying. Power density associated with the welding, different welding processes. Is say this is for gas welding, this is for Melvin metal arc welding or shielded metal arc welding. For GMAW, the MIG process or GMAW process, this is for plasma. So it is in increasing order. If you see the increasing order of the power density, and increasing order of the power density means lesser the heat you can supply just to develop the weld of the given metal system. That is what you can see from here. Next diagram. Say the amount of heat that you need to supply may be fixed in both the cases. Okay, but when you use a high energy density process, it takes very less time. When the time taken by the welding process to bring the things to the molten state is very less, the heat dissipated to the base metal is very less. That's why the HZ is very narrow. On the other hand, when you use the low energy density process to supply the same amount of heat, you need to keep on supplying the heat for longer time, and in this process the heat will be able to get dissipated to the base metal to the greater distance, and that will be forming the large heat affected zone, means greater compromise with the properties of the base metal. Okay, so low energy density process means the greater heat input, very large heat input. You see, heat input to the workpiece. Gas welding, more heat input to the base metal, so more compromise with the properties, greater damage to the workpiece. On the other hand, when the power density related to the process is very high, like say laser beam or electron beam, your other abilities are fine, but the thermal damage is less. Increasing thermal damage this side and decreasing thermal damage in this side. So here radiation based welding processes like laser and electron, they are high power density process. Gas welding or arc welding, they are comparatively low power density welding process. So they supply lot of heat, they have to supply lot of heat. For gas welding it's maximum, medium for arc welding, and minimum for the laser or electron beam welding. So if you are able to weld with the less heat, it's best. Okay, for because it will not be leading any compromise with the properties. So that is why these are other technological factors, like how does the heat affect the performance of the weld. Heat affects the performance of weld primarily in following ways. So before getting into this, let me use little explanation. Okay, so here like this. So say you have supplied lot of heat, so your weld zone size is very large. Okay, this much, and the underlying base metal also has been heated. So heat from the molten metal will be dissipated slowly. So means solidification time to the weld metal will be very long, maybe say 1 minute. Okay, so every grain will be growing to the larger extent like this because of the long solidification time. And when your grains are coarse or very large, your properties, mechanical properties are compromised very badly. So this is not good. On the other hand, when you supply very less heat like this, so weld zone size is very narrow, weld zone size is very small, and heat is dissipated to the underlying base metal, which is low temperature, is very fast. So the solidification time is less. Solidification time is less means cooling rate is very high. That is why you are getting low solidification time, and that's why the grains are fine. When the grains are fine, you find that properties are good. So this is simple relation. The grain size inversely related with the mechanical properties, which is primarily the yield strength. So larger the grain size, lower the mechanical properties. Okay, lower the yield strength. Finer the grain size, better the yield strength. Yield strength is simple. You must have studied in this stress sustain diagram. It is the stress level which is desired for ensuring the plastic deformation of the material. Below that, it will be under the elastic deformation condition. Okay. No, this. So I have already talked about this. So this. There is another aspect. Let me just come out of this PPT kind of thing. Okay. Yeah. So here another important aspect apart from the heat affected zone, very important aspect is this. Like when you heat any metal, like say you must have heard that like iron in even in ambient condition in presence of moisture reacts with the oxygen and forms the iron oxide. Different types of the iron oxides are formed and which appears in form of rust. So this process is slow. It takes long to rust. This iron, it takes long to rust. But when iron is heated to the high temperature, so oxygen reacts very rapidly. Okay, so if you heat it at 300 degrees centigrade, then 600 degrees centigrade, 900 degrees centigrade, you will see that iron has taken the different colors, primarily due to the formation of different types of the oxides. Okay, these oxides, you see, in case of iron, it is fine. The iron oxides, they are not that harmful as compared to the others. Why? Because all these iron oxides, whatever they form, they have got their melting point lower than the iron itself. Okay, so say this is iron and whatever iron oxides you have present at the surface. Okay, so when you heat it, the iron is heated up to say 1540 degrees centigrade. That's the melting point. So FeO, all types of iron oxides will melt earlier before that. So iron oxides melt earlier than the parent metal itself or iron itself. So it's not that problematic, except there is one problem, like iron oxide may mix up with the molten metal. So iron oxide particles may be present here in the weld, in here and there. So this is one thing. Iron oxides is present in the molten metal, in the weld metal as defect. These are called inclusions. So inclusions are being formed due to the primarily reaction of the molten metal with the atmospheric gases. Say it is oxygen leading to the iron oxide formation, or iron nitride with reacting when the hot metal or iron is reacting with the nitrogen to form the iron nitrides, and both are actually harmful for the mechanical properties. If you see, okay, if you see here, a simple general trend, iron or oxygen content in the weld metal, if that is seen in both the cases, you will see for the strength, although with the nitrogen increases, but the ductility and toughness, it comes down. So you can say strength and ductility and toughness both come down heavily with the nitrogen. Okay, so yeah, strength, ductility and toughness like this. On the other hand, if you see the oxygen content in the weld metal, all properties, your strength will come down, ductility will come down, toughness will come down. So everything comes down with the increase of the oxygen in the weld metal. So mechanical properties are badly compromised because this oxygen in the weld metal or nitrogen in the weld metal forming their oxides and nitrides, and these are acting as a defects in the weld metal, and that's why the joint properties are compromised very badly. Okay, so therefore it is important that whenever, and the activity of these metals to react with the oxygen, nitrogen and hydrogen, all this increases with the increase of temperature. The metal activity or ability to react or affinity of the metal with the other gases, it simply increases with the temperature. And here what we are doing, we are increasing the temperature of the metal to the molten state, say, which is in case of iron, say 1540 degrees centigrade. So when the iron is getting heated to the molten state, it becomes very reactive. It shows a strong affinity towards these gases. So whenever it is in molten state, iron is in molten state, it reacts with these oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen, etc., and these get dissolved. Oxygen will get dissolved, nitrogen will get dissolved, hydrogen will get dissolved. And so when these get dissolved, it is fine if it remains in gaseous form. Say gas pockets will be left in the weld, which will reflect in form of pores. Simple. Oxygen and hydrogen contribute a lot in forming these pores, which is leading like loss of metallic continuity, presence of the defect in form of pores. Okay, and why? Because they have the affinity, they get dissolved easily in molten state, and due to the high solidification rate during the welding, they are not able to come out. The gases are not able to come out of the molten metal, and therefore they get trapped. When these get trapped, you find these in form of pores. So not just the chemical affinity and the reactions leading to the formation of oxides and nitrides, but these get trapped also, so leading to the development of pores. Okay, and these pores and the inclusions are harmful for the joint strength or the joint properties. So the weld must be protected from these gases, and that is why we call it protection of weld from the atmospheric gases during the welding. So what we need, that is why we need to protect the weld, because these oxygen, nitrogen and hydrogen, etc., present in the molten, in the ambient air, they will be acting and reacting with the molten metal or hot metal. So this will be leading to the decolorization, this will be leading to the porosity formation, this will be leading to the inclusion formation. So all are undesirable. So what we can do to protect it? Say this is your electrode, simple. So it is coated with the certain fluxes. Okay, when this electrode is coated with the fluxes and the arc is struck between the base metal, say this is the base metal, and arc is struck between the electrode through the suitable electrode connected to the power supply, and arc is, so this is how the circuit is completed. Power supply is connected to the electrode, as well as it is connected, another terminal is connected to the base metal to be joined. So that's how the circuit is completed. So the current will be flowing from the electrode to the base metal, and that's how arc is generated. Temperature of arc is typically minimum 6000 degrees centigrade. It can go as high as say 25 to 30,000 in case of the plasma arc welding. Okay, PA, this is all plasma arc welding. So the temperature is too high, so any metal basically can be brought to the molten state. So when the temperature, such a high temperature heat is supplied by the arc to the base metal comes to the molten state. Okay, so the as far as melting is concerned, that can be easily realized through the gas or through the arc or through the laser. But in all the cases, this oxygen, nitrogen and the hydrogen will be acting or reacting with the molten metal. So we have to protect. So how the protection is coming here in that this flux which is there with the electrode, this decomposes with the heat of arc. This is arc. So heat of the arc decomposes the electrode, the flux with the electrode. So when this decomposition takes place, it forms the oxygen, sorry, carbon dioxide, CO2. So say this is arc. Okay, this is the pool, and the decomposition is taking place and leading to the CO2 or CO formation, which forms the blanket or shroud around the arc or the molten weld pool. So it pushes the oxygen, nitrogen or the atmospheric gases away from the arc zone and forms the blanket or shroud or cover around the arc and around the molten zone. So that's how the oxygen, nitrogen and the hydrogen present in the atmospheric gases, they are pushed away through this thermal decomposition of the electrode coating, which is there mostly in form of fluxes are applied in electrode to form to basically to protect the weld pool from the atmospheric gases. This is one way. There is another way to protect the weld pool from the atmospheric gases, and that is about like around the electrode we have one nozzle. This is electrode, okay, and this is the nozzle. Through this nozzle we supply the inert gases like argon or helium, or we can also supply the gases like we can also supply the gases like CO2, inactive gases. So, but this is primarily used for the ferrous metals like steels, and this is primarily used for the non-ferrous metals or high quality weld joints are need to be prepared of the steels. So, like say for aluminium, for magnesium, for stainless steel, the inert gases are used because they show greater affinity. I'll talk about that, why the inert gases are needed for this particularly. So we supply these inert gases or inactive gases in form of jet through the nozzle. So this is the nozzle, gases are supplied, and so when these gases come out of the nozzle, they form the very firm and strong jet around the arc. So this is the pool, this is the arc, and around the arc it forms a very firm shroud of the inert gases. So use of the inert gases or inactive gases like CO2, depending upon the metal, helps to push the atmospheric gases away from the arc zone, away from the molten metal, and that's how it protects. So this is the second approach. We use in one case, we use the electrode coatings. In the second case, we supply a jet of inert gases around the arc. Okay, so that is, this approach is primarily used in gas metal arc welding. This is also called MIG, and gas tungsten arc welding. This is also called a TIG. Okay, TIG process, tungsten inert gas welding or gas tungsten arc welding process. In both these cases, this inert gas approach is used. Okay, there is a third approach of protecting the weld metal, that is a more simpler one. Here in that case, what we do is so in that case, what we do is basically, let me just end the show, come out with a new one. Okay, so in that case, we use vacuum, and vacuum is primarily, so whether it is the laser welding is also performed with the help of the inert gases like argon or helium. But these approaches of protecting the weld pool are not good for the electron beam. Why? I'll let you know. In electron beam welding, a jet of electron is used that will be striking the base metal to be joined. Okay, so if the jet of or beam of the electron is directed in the ambient atmosphere, then the electrons will be colliding with the atmospheric gases and their kinetic energy will be reduced, so they will not be able to generate enough heat, and that is why you see, despite of providing the protection, it will not be able to weld. So what we do, basically the entire assembly which is to be joined is enclosed in a vacuum chamber. Okay, so and then you supply, so vacuum chamber, in the vacuum chamber the component to be joined are placed. Okay, once the components are placed in the vacuum chamber, you see, so there is no oxygen, there is no nitrogen, because all air has been sucked from the vacuum chamber. Now you direct the electron beam. So the air has been removed from this vacuum chamber and the electron beam is directed onto the base metal for the melting purpose. Because of the high power density, it melts and produces a very high quality joint, because heat delivery is very less for facilitating the fusion, as well as vacuum is created so that there is no presence of the oxygen, nitrogen, to dilute or to degrade the quality of the weld. So this is the third approach of protecting the weld pool. So you have seen now, what you have seen here is the weld performance is governed by the two things. One is the soundness of the weld. Soundness means how defective, if there are oxides, if there are pores. So if oxides and pores are there, means the joint is not cleaned, joint is with the defects. So if the weld is properly protected, then it will be sound. It will not be defective, like presence of oxides and pores, all that will not be there. That's one thing. The second aspect that governs the performance of the weld joint is the heat affected zone. What is the size of heat affected zone and the extent up to which the HAZ properties are compromised due to the application of the heat. So those processes where heat application is very less for developing the joint, so heat HAZ is very narrow. In this case, joint performance will be much better as compared to this case, where a lot of heat has been supplied and very wide heat affected zone has been formed. So the wider heat affected zone, greater the compromise with the properties. So these are the two things that will primarily governing the performance of any joint. Okay, so reduce the heat input to reduce the HAZ and protect the weld pool to avoid any kind of the undesirable effect of the atmospheric gases. Okay, now I'll talk little bit more about why certain metals are more difficult to weld than others. Okay, like aluminium is not easy to weld by the gas welding. They are not welded. Same is true for the shielded metal arc welding, where simple stick electrode like this electrode core wire coated with the flux for providing the shielding, and then there is an arc. This approach is also not good for welding of aluminium. Same is true for titanium and magnesium. These are not welded easily. Hello? Saying something? Okay, so why it is more difficult to weld certain metals as compared to the others, and why they need more protection? The reason is simple. All these metals, including chromium, which is added significantly in stainless steels, these are found difficult to weld. Why? Because whatever the oxides they will be forming, like Al2O3 or TiO2 or MgO or your chromium oxide Cr2O3, all these oxides, they have their melting point much higher than the parent metal themselves. So say aluminium melts at 660, but say alumina may be melting around 2100. So once it is formed, then it will not allow the base metal to be melted easily. And if that is happening, then what you will find, like this is the base metal, you are heating, applying the heat through arc, and your alumina is being formed, or titanium oxide or chromium oxide is being formed. It will form a reaction oxide layer. So, let's say the oxide layer, which is refractory, is not melting easily. So it will interfere with the melting of the base metal, as well as it will not get melted. So it will be there as oxide inclusions. So the formation of certain oxides with the metals like aluminium, magnesium, chromium, stainless steels, titanium, they need more effective protection, and that is why they are frequently welded with the good protection based welding processes like GTAW gas tungsten arc welding or GMAW gas metal arc welding. They are not welded by the shielded metal arc welding or submerged arc welding or gas welding. So this is the main reason, because when we use these two processes, we use argon, we use helium, which helps to provide very good protection so that these refractory oxides are not formed. Okay, this is the main thing as far as these are the main fundamentals as far as the welding is concerned. Okay, so as far as the now other aspects are there, let me talk. Once you understand this thing, probably rest of the things will be easier for you to get. Okay, so let me talk just about this. So as I said, whenever you are having like say if the protection is not good, what harm it can do. Protection is needed for the weld pool so that entrapment of the gases in the weld can be avoided. Okay, the gases react with the weld metal so that the inclusions can be avoided by forming their oxides, by avoiding the formation of their oxides. Contamination of the weld pool from the oxides and nitrites, as I've already said, these gases dissolve, so these will be there in form of pores. These gases can react to form the inclusions in form of like say oxides and nitrites. So as I said, there are different welding processes: submerged arc welding, gas tungsten or TIG welding, shielded metal arc welding, or gas metal arc welding. Okay, self-shielded arc welding. These are the say 4 or 5 processes which are compared. So what is the amount of the oxygen in the weld, amount of or nitrogen in the weld that is produced by these processes? So if you see, the gas tungsten arc welding process produces the cleanest weld because minimum oxygen in the weld, this is oxygen content, and minimum nitrogen in the weld. Okay. Next clean process is probably the gas metal arc welding, that is this. So GTAW is the cleanest among the all these arc welding processes which are very commonly used. Thereafter you have shielded metal arc welding. This is called like most commonly used. Roadside welding is performed using this only. Then submerged arc welding is another which is used for the joining of the thick sections. Okay, so the every process is different with regard to their ability to produce a clean weld. Okay. So this example I have already said, like greater the nitrogen in the weld, more the problems related to the toughness and ductility. All the strength and strength goes high. Similarly for oxygen, the elongation, toughness, ductility, and the yield strength, everything goes up. Why? Because see, this is the answer. So your the alloying element concentration in the weld is adversely affected when the oxygen content is oxygen content in the weld is more, because these metals will be reacting with the oxygen and the elements will be going in form of slag or inclusions. So your alloying element content is getting reduced basically. Okay. These are the approaches I have already talked: vacuum, or the developing the inert gas envelope of the inactive or inert gases. I didn't talk about this, but this is primarily used in the submerged arc welding. In this case, what we do, arc is here, then we prepare one, we put one flux powder all around this. Okay, so flux powder melts and forms the thin slag layer, a thin molten slag layer around the arc. So that's how it helps to avoid the direct contact of the atmospheric gases with the arc and with the molten metal. So this is what is used in case of the arc. Electron beam welding process uses the vacuum. So how effective it is, there are a number of things, a number of factors that will be governing the cleanliness of the weld. That is a different thing. This needs a greater elaboration. So maybe I'll stop here. By the next lecture, we will start the different things related with this, and I think that is about this one. Okay, yes. So what I have talked is that was about the like what are the important things that govern the joint performance in fusion welding? Fusion welding is the process which is mostly used for developing the joint because it offers very good strength, although there are a number of technicalities related with the development of joints which should be kept in mind so that the desired performance can be realized. Now, as far as the different types of the joint and other things are concerned, that is primarily based on the like orientation, how the components are oriented which are to be joined. So when they are at the same level like this abutting position, this is called a butt joint. When the one member is overlapping the another, this is called lap joint. When the joint between the two members is at the corner like this, it is called corner joint. So then one member is placed perpendicular to the another one, this is leading to the T joint. And when the joint is made between the edges of the two members to be connected, this is called edge joint. So in T joint, the joint is primarily made here like this. In the case of the corner joint is made in this zone. Joint is made here for the butt joint, and a joint is made in case of the lap joint at these edges. This is how the joint is made. But this classification of the types of the joint is based on the orientation of the members, where they are oriented and how they are placed between which a joint is to be made. Okay, other things we will continue in the next lecture. So here I will take a break. This will go now very fast because now we have talked most of the fundamentals and why what our things are needed as far as the cleanliness or the protection of the weld or the heat input related things. Okay, the other things are like how to make a joint and what are the different things needed, why they are needed. So about that we will be talking in the coming lectures.